And that brings me to my guest in studio. I have Amanda Clinton. She's head of Chambers Clinton Consultancy. We also have Kofi Tonto. He's political aide to former Vice President Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. We're expecting a third guest, and as and when he joins us, I'll introduce him to you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Yeah,
Thanks for having us.
Amanda, because you're a regular guest, Kofi, I think this is my first time meeting you on the AM show, so I want to give you your first 1 minute. Usually we give our guests a minute or so to reflect on any topical issue that they have a point to make on. So your 1 minute starts now.
Yeah, I think mine, a very good morning to you. I've been here several times, but I haven't had the chance to meet with you.
Okay.
So this is the first time. Amanda too, I've seen her on News.
Kindly speak up for me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I've seen you on Newsfile also, so I'm very familiar with her legal prowess. Personally, there are a few things that are bothering me. One of them being the cost of airplane tickets, domestic, quite high. I've seen that. I think a few days ago, Passion Air did a 10% reduction, which is good. But nevertheless, I think it's still high. I mean, some tickets are going as much as 4,400 cedis for a round trip from Accra to Kumasi. And looking at the current exchange rate, even if you are using 10 cedis per dollar, that's almost $450 for a 30-minute flight. That's quite on the high side. So something that some of us have been raising, but we've seen some airlines making changes. But I think they can do.
Well, should we just leave it to them? What do you suggest we do? Looking at a more nationalistic approach to this, what do you suggest? So
I have raised the issue that Parliament needs to do a bit more. In the US, for example, Congress has some degree of oversight. If I remember instances where airlines were charging some outrageous fees for luggages, Congress was able to call them in and say, look, explain to us the basis for why you are doing this. Eventually, they were able to get the companies to pull away from such what they termed as junk fees. When it comes to other companies like Wells Fargo, Congress was able to call them in.
So it's up to Parliament.
So Parliament, even if it's not constitutional now, as we are looking to amend our constitution, we need to give Parliament the powers to be able to query private companies and bring them in to justify some outrageous decisions.
Okay.
Because they have to be the first point of call to protect consumers. I see nothing wrong with Parliament coming in to protect consumers.
All right.
And holding
before I move on from you, do you think the national airline, which I know is the plans are set in motion, there's been a committee inaugurated and all, they're doing the work for it. Do you think that helps in any way?
Well, if the national airline will have a domestic side, the ones that we've seen in the past typically
are international.
International. So if it will have a domestic end to it, then it will offer another competition. It will offer another competition. But as it stands, we have a duopoly, which is we have the two airlines.
Yeah.
So if the national airline comes in and the national airline is able to offer domestic, then at least we have a third company.
Okay.
I think if we have a few more companies, it will help.
Right.
But I doubt the national airline will be domestic. They'll probably focus more on the international angle.
Well, thank you, Kofi Tonto, for sharing those thoughts. It's actually a very topical and national issue. So
it's a big issue.
If Parliament will heed this call, they should take this up. Amanda, it's your time now to share your thoughts with us. And what's on your mind? It's been a very newsy month, hasn't it?
It has. I think I just want to piggyback off what you just said about airlines. You're absolutely right. A review has to be done about tickets, but particularly on the continent as well.
Yes.
For instance, Sierra Leone, South Africa, Kenya, if you book a flight right now, even an economy ticket, it is the same price as flying to London, if you can imagine, and the US. Literally, I mean, it might be $100 or $200 apart, but it's the same price, and that is not competitive enough. So I think with a new national airline, if they can address that for flights to, for instance, regional Sierra Leone, South Africa, Kenya, where you're not paying as much as you're flying to London, it would make us competitive enough, and perhaps it would make the airline profitable. The other thing that's been on my mind is the Fitch upgrade, I think, from restricted default to B-. It's fantastic news, but I think it also means we're not just copying IMF manuals. You know, we're literally learning from Zambia, Benin, and, you know, other African countries, and literally knowing that if we focus on domestic, it's smart and necessary because, you know, for instance, the Iran war, potentially, and oil shocks, etc. It's better to build ourselves domestically, you know, before we do that. And my final point, I think, is education. You know, Minister Haruna Iddrisu has said that they're going to address the quality of the food, in particular, because we've seen evidence of Gari and palm nut soup. It's not fit for consumption, particularly if, you know, 500 million Ghana cedis has been spent, you know, in December 2024 alone. So I think that's really important, that the quality of the food is improved.
All right.
So it's for human consumption, basically.
Okay, thank you, Amanda. And I mean, that point you made on the flights within the African region, I think we should also put that call on those in charge of AFTA. You know,
yes.
That's one of the reasons why we have that. And if we have problems like that and the road infrastructure, even within the continent, is not enabling trade, you know, then where are we going? Yeah. It's a good time to welcome Member of Parliament for Brekusu West. He just joins us, Mr. Chredua Dixon. He's Member of Parliament for Brekum West, and he joins us now. Sir, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
You look good. You look like an MP.
Thank you very much for the compliment. Kofi is my big brother, so...
Okay. Okay.
And a very good morning to our viewers across the world.
Okay, well, it's good to have you. So what we're doing is taking some reflections from our guests on topical issues. I'll give you 1 minute to also walk us through anything that is topical on your mind right now.
One thing trending is the nomination of the Supreme Court judges, the vetting and matters arising. And I want to look at it from the point where my big brother Kofi has been trumpeting about packing the bench. If you look at the nominees who have appeared before the appointment committee, clearly you will know President Mahama is rather solving a very serious problem within the judicial system. What do I mean by that? We know there are a number of senior judges who have been overlooked in terms of promotion to the Supreme Court. So the 7 who were nominated, who have made the appointment committee, if you look at their backgrounds, if you look at their credentials, you know clearly there was something wrong somewhere, and that was affecting morale within the judicial service. If you take somebody like Justice Dennis Dominic J, who has been at the bench at the appeals committee for 15 good years, since 2010, a member of the African Court, a member of the International Criminal Court Advisory Committee, 9 committee member, and been at the appeals court for 15 good years since 2010. And he's been overlooked all these years. Justice Jamafe has been there for over 15 years. He's been overlooked. If you look at Janapari, I was surprised. If you look at the credentials, been at the bench for over 30 years, starting as a magistrate court, district court, high court. I will interject,
but I want some clarity. Are you saying, when you say they have been overlooked, are you talking about their longevity in the service? Are you talking about their competence?
Yeah, exactly.
So the judges who were sent to the Supreme Court ahead of them, or you know, those you think have been sidestepped, were they not competent enough?
Now, what I'm saying is, in every profession, career progression is very important. So if you resume from magistrate court, district court, high court, appeals court, been there for 15 years, and people are appointed straight away, some from bar, they have no experience in the bench. That's not to say they don't qualify. What that means is people begin to think, what are the rewards? Because you work hard, move from one stage to another. with a view that you will get to the apex of your career. And when that happens, when people get to that point and they are overlooked, it affects morale in the service.
All right.
So the point I want to make is that contrary to perception and the assertion by our brothers that the court is being packed, it is rather a way of motivating staff of the judicial service, especially those in the bench, that if you work hard, get to the certain point, you will be recognized.
All right.
So that is one important point I want to make. And you were talking about the fares, flight, internal flights and stuff like that. You know, for instance, if you look at my region, Bono region, it is mainly due to lack of competition. There's only one flight, that's Passion Air. And shockingly, just 40 minutes flight, sometimes it costs as much as 2,300.
Oh, they just quote in 4,000.
One way, no, that's what you're talking about. A return flight, you're looking at close to 5,000, depending on when you book it. You know, if you look at routes like Accra, Kumasi, Accra, Tamale, because there is competition, sometimes you have options. But in our place, because there is no competition, it's astronomically high and very difficult to get. Sometimes you need to book 2 weeks in advance. And I think we need to look at that as well. Government should work to incentivize private sector so that we can enhance competition, especially in the local flight. And of course, government should also be looking at our national carrier that will be doing international flight and local flight to boost competition and enhance productivity.
All right, so that's that for the reflections. Let's get into the papers. But Kofi Tonto, you wanted to say something. Make it brief, and then we get into this.
As you rightfully said, he looks very good this morning. But as usual, he laces the nice look with propaganda. You know how he
What
did
has
it
he said that doesn't sit well with you?
What he sought to do this morning was to chastise Akufo-Addo, but in a very beautiful way. To suggest that Akufo-Addo overlooked certain people.
Oh, no.
But that's all he said.
No, if you listen very well, I did not doubt the qualifications of those who were promoted. But I said there were others who were also due for promotion. They didn't get the opportunity.
No, but you see, here's the point.
I think that he's not responsible. Everything he said he's responsible for. He didn't mention Akufo-Addo. So, and that is his reflection on a national issue. You don't get to rebut or refute what he said because your reflection has been given already.
Please, I know him.
So what I'm saying is when we get into the newspapers proper, when we discuss the story.
That's a quick
No,
response.
Otherwise it becomes so much political. There are so many human interest stories that I'm interested in. So let's start there.
But you see,
before we get into the politics.
It's important that we also offer education to the people.
And my point is, he hasn't mentioned the NPP or Akufo-Addo in any way. He's saying that he's happy or he's glad that these judges are now getting their flowers. I think we should end it there and get into the
Well,
papers.
anyways, I think it was more than that.
Okay.
I'll leave.
All right. Thank you. So this is what I want to do. I'll get one story each from you. We discuss and then we go for another round before I get into my papers. Amanda, of course, I'll start with you. Give us one main story from, is it the Ghanaian Times you have?
Yes, I have the New Republic and the Ghanaian Times.
Okay, so one story.
One story each. The first one is Mahama, and this is from the New Republic. Mahama vows to crush corrupt MMDCs. Quite an interesting article because it highlights the fact that, you know, perhaps NDC is not just going to look outward to other parties, but also look inward. And he's emphasized that these officials have been entrusted with substantial public resources and must therefore uphold integrity, transparency, and accountability. And he's talking about his own NDC people. And he says that my government will not protect any form of corrupt MMDCs when the corruption investigation agencies are after you. So I think that's quite refreshing for the public to know that, you know, this sort of Operation Oral is not just outward, but he's literally said there will be no protection. Should any of them eventually be found to, you know, engage in corruption.
Okay.
And
so let me go around. I'll come back to you for your second story. Mr. Dixon, how corrupt our MMDC is, and when do we start to rid the corruption off from that entity? And I listened to the president, actually. He said that they should be careful because those who come after them may have to be elected. You know, this will be the last time that MMDCs will be appointed. So they're in a very privileged position right now. So talk to us about that.
You sure this admonishment comes on the back of the president's decision to allocate a lot of resources to the district assemblies as its way of entrenching decentralization. You know, prior to coming into office on the 7th January, specifically during the previous administration, just about 40% of the common fund allocation was going to the district assemblies. And in my district assembly, for instance, Brikum West, throughout the year, hardly would you get up to 6 million Ghana cedis a year. Now, with the current formula, every district assembly will be getting a whooping 25 million Ghana cedis a year. And the government has a caveat that a minimum of 80% of the allocation of the district assemblies common fund should go directly to the district assemblies. What that means is the MMDCs will be having a lot of resources. The MMDCs will be having a lot of money. The MMDCs will be awarding a lot of contracts. So they will determine the developmental priorities of their various districts, municipalities, and metropolitan areas. And it is on the back of that that he is advising them, we are now releasing all the resources to you to decide what you want to do with them, and you have to be very prudent in your expenditure. And the president has issued a guide as to how this money should be utilized. It may interest you to know that previously, you go to some assemblies and you'll be told about 30–40% of the district assemblies common fund was utilized for administrative expenditure. This time round, the president has capped that up to just 5% and has given direction 20% going to finish legacy project. And I think that's, for me, the most significant aspect, that the money going to the district assemblies, the president has directed that all projects started by the previous administration that have been abandoned or that were not completed, allocate at least 20% to complete those projects. And that is quite refreshing. And we know President Mahama's fierce reputation for clamping down on corrupt practices, even when they are his own appointees. So I will urge the MMDCs to take this admonishment seriously, because the president will not spare any one of them if you caught in the web.
Right. So in spite of these directives and instructions and guide, I think where the rot begins often is monitoring and evaluation. It's not something we are very intentional about in this country, from my observation, and I know most of you will agree with me. So is there any particular system in place to monitor whether or not they are actually expending these monies according to the guide, so we don't wait for another year or 4 years before we realize that, oh, they didn't in fact follow the directive of the president? Exactly.
When the finance minister announced the releases to the district assemblies and parliament, if you followed closely, as part of the announcement, he said, now members of parliament within their various constituencies, districts, will be monitoring, will be reporting on these expenditures. Just like, MP share of common fund goes to the assembly, assemblies report on how the members of parliament utilize that. Now, members of parliament are involved in the utilization of the district assemblies common fund.
And so they are the ones
that will enhance monitoring and evaluation, and I think is a good thing for now.
Kofi Tonto, I'm on you now. First of all, feel free to talk about whether or not this election, the question of whether or not they should be elected has always been there. It was whether or not we should elect them along partisan lines or not. And then this new restructuring, seeking to decentralize our local governance. Let's hear your take on that.
Yeah, so on the elections, we've come full circle. I mean, this is an exercise where we were almost just at the referendum level. You know, remember
yes.
The Honorable Minister Hajia Alima Mahama then went through a very rigorous process for us to elect MMCs, only for NDC and some civil society organizations at last minute to say that, look, we are no more interested. And for that suggestion to even come, both political parties agreed that we should elect MMDCs. And then I think the departure came on the basis of partisanship. But from the vetting ongoing, one of the justices has actually, I don't know which one of them, but one of the justices has made it clear that the idea that we must elect MMDCs in a non-partisan manner is not tenable. You know, I wish I could remember the exact name of the justice. So we've come full circle. Because look, we cannot kid ourselves. You know, when you go to that level, and MP knows very well, at that level, it is probably more partisan than the top. So I think the time has come for us to, of course, elect MMDCs. But I see nothing wrong electing them on a partisan level. Because when you put in a law that says we won't elect them on partisan level, all that politicians will do is to go and hide behind people. We have not done anything. So let's just be clear in our minds what we want to do and get it done. That way we can hold them accountable. Because, look, if you are giving monies to all the monies that he's referring to, and the president is appointing that person, there's still some degree of control from the presidency, from the center. But if that person is elected, then that person will be held accountable by the people. He will be more focused on delivering to the people than delivering to a president. You know, so these things are beautiful. I mean, you know, the suggestions about giving them more money, entrenching decentralization and all of that, I have no qualms.
All right.
But let's elect them and let's hold them accountable. And then let's delineate so we know the job of the MP and the job of the MMDC.
Okay.
Because right now, there are some overlaps. Because the MP's job is not to fix roads, but to lobby, of course, lobbying. Yeah. But the MMDC has more responsibility in that regard. But we hold an MP who doesn't have the resources to do that, except to lobby.
Hopefully this begins to even bring some clarity.
Yeah, of course, of course. So I think it's a good thing.
It's a good call.
That we must all support.
Amanda, I'm back to you for a second story.
From the same paper or different paper?
Oh, anyone. Whichever you think is...
Well, I think what's quite exciting is, you know, the East Legon Sakawa chairman sings like a canary bird.
Oh. Is that how is that a headline you're reading?
That is a headline. Literally.
I guess it's from the New Republic.
It is from the New Republic. It's sensationalizing a very serious issue, which of course is romance scams, and you know, it's quite prevalent, particularly in Ghana and Nigeria. But this is it's a big one. It's $100 million romance scam syndicate, and they're apparently called the East Legon Executive Club. And the paper reports that despite the extensive duration of their operations, which span from elaborate romance scams to business email compromises, there has been a puzzling lack of action from security agencies to dismantle the enterprise. And it also says with Donald Trump's administration's determined to crack down on criminal activities and the recent warning of travel bans on over 30 countries, mostly from Africa, you know, it gives a highlight that this extradition of these guys are quite important because it will show Ghana's robust response to such things. But I mean, it is big business, but it affects people's lives, you know, clients in the US, etc. They take loans out just to give to someone that they think is sincere. And a lot of the, when we go to the police and different things, the strange thing we find is, a lot of these people do focus on juju practices in terms of ways of extracting from people who would perhaps never.
I thought it was just them keeping their wits about them.
No, I mean, even the police, because I always discuss with the police, you know, why would people give so much money? And they go into some of these people's houses, apparently, and they see all this paraphernalia in relation to juju practices and like cupboards full of like rat droppings and things that they have to do, etc. And it's really odd.
The
but
rituals.
yes, there's a lot of rituals involved because it boggles the mind sometimes the level of money and why someone would take a loan out to send someone you've never met money.
Okay.
So it's really important that the CID not only deal with this, but as the article highlights, you know, this could potentially expose politicians in this $100 million romance scam. So it's something to watch.
It is.
Yeah.
A realistic question, Mr. Dixon. Do you think we can, Ghana, let's just limit it to Ghana. Can we rid ourselves of this image of, you know, one of the countries in West Africa who are actually patronizing this romance scam? Most of the rich people you see with unexplained wealth, they'll tell you that if you don't know where the money is coming from, it's probably because they're
if it's not drugs.
It's fraudulent, you know. Yeah. Mr. Dixon, your take on this?
I think it is worrisome, and we need to do a lot more about it. It has reputational implications for Ghana as a democratic country, and I'm quite excited to see that Yoko FBI are now collaborating. I understand a couple of people are to be extradited to the United States to face justice. I think we should do more to enhance the reputation of this country.
Okay, Kofi Tonto.
So beyond the legal aspect, there are market implications as well. You know, for example, when we talk about money laundering, when we talk about these fraudulent activities, they have the potential to skyrocket prices of goods and services in a nation or in an area. You know, when you come to Ghana, one of the challenges we face is the cost of real estate. You know, the cost of real estate being so expensive, largely fueled by, quote unquote, such monies. Because people have money, unaccountable money, to pay for things that are not even valued at the prices that they are paying for. You know, so people are buying homes and lands at outrageous prices because they have money that they have to clean. You know, because if you are able to buy a home, essentially, you take dirty money, buy a home, then you turn around and resell it, and then you have clean money. And this is impacting our country and our mortgage system and our real estate system in a very negative way.
And it's not just real estate. So it's the event industry as well.
Yes.
They throw big parties.
Yes.
You don't understand why someone would throw such amounts of money on an event. Yeah. And it's just a way to wash the money.
Wash the money, exactly.
There's so many mechanisms in place.
Of course. And so it's not just a social vice that's affecting our youth, of course. Creating a persona and a lifestyle that's not attainable in a normal way, you know. So we definitely have to crack down on it through the legal avenue, and then also crack down on it within our social architecture to make sure we rid off these practices.
Okay.
You know, it's not the best for us. Yeah.
Mr. Dixon, what paper do you have?
Yeah, I have Overseer.
Okay.
The Overseer.
Which story is
I want
exciting?
to touch on the story by Honorable Boachi Ejako, that you don't roof before the foundation. Ejako rejects MPP's top-down approach. And the former energy minister described this as strategically unsound, politically.
Are we talking about here, the election?
Yeah, election of flag bearer before election of party executives.
Yeah.
He described this as strategically unsound, politically indefensible, and organizationally reckless. What manner of political logic is this? He queried. Where in any world, be it in politics, construction, or any other field, or common sense, do you install the roof before the foundation? And that dovetails into my submission on your sister station, Asempa, 3 days ago, that this top-down approach is meant simply to protect the current executives It is scratch my back, I scratch your back. As it stands, if MPP were to conduct their executive elections from branches to constituency, regional, national, I can tell you over 60–70% of the current executives will go.
What research backs this?
Because of the turnout, the results, they churn out on the 7th of December, and they know the base is agitated. They are eager to reject them at the constituency, regional, and national level. So by adopting this approach, one is meant to protect one particular flag candidate. If that candidate wins, then that candidate will also protect the executives to also maintain their positions. And I think it's going to create a lot of chaos, and we are aware of what is going on. For me, as an NDC, I'm not particularly concerned about what is going on. Our focus is to work very hard, because if you look at the 2016 results, 169, 106 for MPP, 169 MPs, 106 NDC. In 2020, it was 137, 137. And now it is 187, 88. So we should not be complacent about things happening within MPP and think 2028 is already done.
Do you
We need
think
to
this
stay
does
focused,
anything
work hard.
to distract your governance as we speak? I know you said that you don't really concern yourself with what's happening, but they are part of governance as opposition. Do you think this...
Not at all, except that some of our grassroots people are rejoicing about the chaos and think that is going to inure to our benefit. That's why I'm cautioning that we should not be bothered about what is happening. We should rather be focusing on what the government is doing, the tight fiscal discipline that has led to Fitch upgrading us, the reduction of our petroleum prices, reduction of inflation 24 to 18, and the rebound of the economy, mainly driven by the agri sector, which grew over 6% in the first quarter. These are things we should be focusing on doing and not be so obsessed with the chaos within the MPP.
I can't wait to hear Kofi Tonto on this. Let's go.
Well, first of all, you know, MPP is not a house. MPP is a dynamic institution with some degree of fluidity. Okay, so when you compare an institution like the MPP to a house, you get it wrong. Okay?
You're talking about Boacheja.
I'm talking about Boacheja.
Talking about bottom-up approach.
I'm saying that MPP is not a house to be roofed, or you know the analogy that you read. It's a dynamic institution, and dynamic institutions evolve, they grow. The current state of the party requires decisions that will bring the party together, unify, and minimize the bleeding. Go on social media right now and look at the vitriol, the attacks against each other. If you are to extend, and these attacks are largely driven by the impending flag bearer elections. If you are to extend this for the next 2 years, just imagine a political party, a government takes a decision to add 1 Ghana cedi to every liter of fuel. The opposition party's job is to hold the government accountable, push back for the good people of this republic. But what do you see the MPP doing? We are rather focused on attacking each other. We are not even offering Ghanaians the opposition that Ghanaians deserve, largely because we are fighting amongst ourselves on who becomes the flag bearer of the party. You do not leave your political party in that juncture. And that is why, to unify and to make sure we stop the acrimony, the decision, largely by over 90% of people who took the decision, that look, let's go ahead and do this as early as possible, and let's start from the top. You know, the point is, if you go and conduct elections at the polling station level, You are talking about 40,000 polling stations across the country. Each polling station has about 5 executives. Now we are extending it to make it 7. So if you are doing even 7 times 40,000, how many people? A lot of people. So imagine going for this degree of election. Candidate A says, I want this person to contest for me. Because obviously, if you are doing it from that level, the people who want to contest at the flag bearer level would take interest at the polling station level. They would want to make sure their people win at the polling station level. So what eventually ends up happening is that you divide the party at the base about 5 or 6 times. Because Brian will have his people, Baumia will have his people, Kennedy will have his people. Then you go to electoral area coordinators. Then you go to constituency. Then you go to regional. Then you come to national. By the time you do the flag bearer election, you won't have any party. You won't have any political party. And that is why you select the leader, then the entire party rallies around the leader, and we move forward. So I don't see the point about roofing and all of that. This is a dynamic party. Look, even our national constitution, Amanda is a lawyer, what are we doing? We are amending our national constitution to meet the current times. Is that not so? So if a party finds itself in a situation where we are coming from such a gruesome election, and we feel like, look, let's take decisions to protect the unity of this party. What is this thing about roofing?
Thank you. Amanda, let's get your thoughts on this matter as well. One thing you've done that I commend is that you've admitted that you are fighting among yourselves.
Of course, certainly.
And so this, while you flaw the analogy, this is an aberration that makes everyone wonder, what's the strategy here? What's the hidden intent that we can't see right now? Which is nothing new to politicians. They're telling you one thing, but at the back of their minds, in the quietness of their hearts, there's something else that they don't want to say.
There's something else. It's okay when I told you.
No, we get it. Yeah. So you're trying to unite your party so that the fighting among yourselves can stop. Amanda, let's take your thoughts on this.
Well, I think that a party divided can never succeed. So it is important to have some level of strategy as to how you pick the flag bearer, etc. And I think it's really important that NPP has admitted, they suffered a huge loss.
Yeah.
And so they need to start addressing this. And the worst thing you can do is infighting, etc. So having a strategy to pick the leader and for everybody to rally around that pick is very important, because there's a lot of big players within NPP, and the more they fight, the more the public will sort of be like, they still haven't got it together. So it is their way of resolving their house or house affairs, etc.
All right.
Basically.
I want to get one more story from you, but I want to squeeze this in because time may not allow us to get into every story. The issue about the free senior high school and the feeding. The story is on myjoyonline.com. You can go there and follow. But let me just read a bit, some of the shocking details for me. So the minister says, government has no intention of scrapping the decentralized system, right? But they are prepared to modify it where necessary. So between December and yesterday, we've disbursed 500 million Ghana cedis and 600 million Ghana cedis. Just today, that was yesterday, I am aware that 203 million Ghana cedis and 208 million Ghana cedis plus an additional 100 million Ghana cedis have been disbursed. Yet, I mean, despite the funding, the quality of food that are being served to our students is heartbreaking, heart-wrenching, to say the least. So they want to do an audit, understand what's going on so that they can begin to plug the loopholes over there. We did a series, a feature series or a documentary, Empty Plate, something, and you think that from that time till now, something would have changed, but it's still the same story. Amanda, you started speaking on this, so let me start from you again.
I mean, it's huge sums of money, and for food not to be edible is a very serious concern. And I really do believe that an audit isn't about blame. It's about ensuring every CD spent translates to nutritious food for our future leaders, so to speak. Because, if ultimately decentralization fails to deliver, it can be reversed. But it's really about, options and making sure an audit takes place, etc. Because for such huge sums of money to be spent on such a noble, venture, sort of like the school feeding program, an audit would certainly have to be done as to what exactly is happening, that, the Gary and the palm nut soup is not fit for consumption, it's appalling, and what is happening to these huge sums of money, because that in itself is a potential corruption investigation, and to just decentralize and see where the blockage is coming from, basically.
Yeah. So good call for the audit to ascertain where the rot really begins from and ended. Mr. Dixon.
That's a sad story because I was one of the fiercest campaigners against centralizing the school feeding. We campaigned fiercely that should be centralized. And upon assumption of office, President Mahama is gradually decentralizing everything, especially at the moment the perishables are provided by the headmasters and the bezes at the local level.
In fact, let me just add one more point in your favor. There was something about ordering the rice or maize from Upper West region to be brought so that they can send those to
exactly,
so that they don't go waste.
Exactly. So the president is doing everything to enhance the school, the feeding at the senior high schools. And I'm very surprised that these are the pictures we're getting out there. The president has done the part. This year alone, Get Fund has released 2.7 billion to the education sector, and a chunk of that went to the senior high schools, especially with the feeding. And if this is what we're getting, I think we need to take a second look. So I'm all for the audit with a view to enhancing the nutrition of our students.
Okay, so some of the concerns were from people that I believe may not be sympathizers of the NDC, that they were letting go of some of the stakeholders and these bezes and the rest. But the minister clarified that that's not what they're doing. No, they're re-engaging these stakeholders and various people who play in this industry, because it's really sad. Kofi Tonto.
Yeah, so for me, I mean, I'll be the first to admit that, we have challenges with our school feeding program, and we definitely have to do more to fix whatever challenge we face with the school feeding program. But, my brother, Dixon, one of the promises President Mahama made was to take the school feeding program from the buffer stock and give it to the headmasters, right?
Yeah.
But just this morning, I was watching a video where the minister has admitted that decision is not helping. I'm sure you've seen the video.
Oh, yeah, that's why we need to review,
Exactly. So the point is, yes, you didn't come to meet a perfect school feeding system. But your solutions, ab initio, were they meant to solve the problem or were they meant to be political? Because the commentary made prior to winning the elections and the actions you are taking now clearly shows that the solutions you offered before winning the elections were not properly thought through. Let's admit it. And the minister has. Because even if we have challenges with buffer stock, you identify what the challenges are and you solve them. How do you go to a headmaster whose job is to administer the school and tell the headmaster to go to market and buy goods? I mean, I'm sure you remember His Excellency making this commentary in opposition.
Kofi, you agree that was the system that served us well from Kwame Nkrumah until
first of all, that system,
free SHS came in.
My brother, that system
until free SHS came in, the bezers and headmasters were responsible for feeding.
I'm the one talking.
Okay, let me moderate
students.
This.
I'm the one talking.
Because you threw the question at him.
No, it's rhetorical. It's rhetorical.
All right, go ahead.
The point is, let's not create the impression that before free SHS, young Ghanaian students were eating jollof rice with chicken and all of that. Please, let's be careful. We've always had challenges with our feeding. So let's not create the impression that free SHS came and then all of a sudden. No. But the point that I'm making is that let's limit the politics. And I'm glad Haruna Idrusu has admitted that your solution was a bad solution. So we will all support a new approach to ensure that we offer the best of foods for our children. Me, I won't do politics with it. And we will support whatever the minister wants to do. There are certain things we shouldn't politicize. And free school feeding is one of them.
All right.
So I really hope the minister will come up with the best solution, and we can all rally behind it to ensure our kids get the best and the most nutritious food for themselves. Yeah.
Well, my second story is on the Canary, page 2, surge in locally produced chicken. My vision, Eric Opoku. And I think that's a fantastic story. Unfortunately, I was embedded in the delegation of the minister when he paid a courtesy call at Otumfuo's.
That's the Canary newspaper,
yeah,
right?
Canary newspaper. And it's talking about Ghana being among the top countries that consume chicken. Per capita consumption, 14 kilos. Compared to Nigeria, per capita consumption, just 3 kilos. And every year, Ghana spends in excess of $400 million importing poultry into the country. And sadly enough, notwithstanding the fact that we are consuming a lot of chicken, only 5% is produced locally, 95% imported. And the vision of the president, which is being implemented by the distinguished minister, Honorable Eric Opoku, through Nkukong Kitenkete and other policies, is that we should increase our local production, and the benefit thereof is that...
Bring us up to speed in terms of how that's going.
That's very, very well. 55,000 households are targeted. They've started releasing this by the end of the month. Chicken and feed will be given out. Government has also earmarked big producers and will be supporting them, supporting producers of agri-feed. And he visited A2 in Kumasi, a company doing very well in that direction. So it is something I'm all for, and we support the minister to achieve. We are living in a country where in excess of $2 billion, that's our food import bill annually. 400 million goes into tomato, 400 million poultry, 400 million rice. And these are things we can do locally and export. So if he says his vision is to increase local production, he is well on course. And I'm very confident the policies on the implementational strategies on the ground will yield dividends by the end of the year. And Kofi, I want to advise that take advantage of the Nkukong Kitenkete. I've already put in my application, and I will be having about 100 beds at my own backyard, and I will not be buying imported chicken.
So let me
during this coming
commend him. He's one of the big farmers in the Brekum area. He's doing excellent when it comes to farming. So definitely a good thing. On what you've read regarding the Honorable Minister and the poultry, I don't have any issues with it. I think it's a good thing. We definitely have to improve in our local production when it comes to poultry. Personally, it's something that I'm also interested in. And I think we should all take interest in doing it.
Amanda, are you also interested in farming?
Not yet, but I'm evolving.
Right. I mean, when I was growing up, we didn't buy tomatoes, ginger, pepper, and we definitely didn't buy chicken. You know, we reared them. Everyone had a hen coop of sort where you reared them, as you know, and it's easy to do. You don't have to find so much to feed them. And here we are.
With the government intervention, you'll be provided with a chicken. You'll be supported with a feeding.
You're getting too excited.
So,
yeah, he is, isn't he? Let's get into your newspaper now.
Don't get too
I'm gonna quick thoughts on that, or can we move on?
No,
let's go into your story.
You know, I saw a story of a friend of mine, and I just want to say a big congratulations to him.
What paper is this? Daily Democrat.
Daily Democrat. Says public relations expert Bagbara Tanko takes leadership role as head of PR at the Ministry of Sports and Recreation. He's a fine gentleman. I have the opportunity to work with him briefly on a few projects, and he's a fine gentleman. So I just want to extend congratulations to him.
All right.
And then also Kingsley Ajiman rescues Kibi Deaf School from hunger crisis. I think it's also commendable. I think largely we've discussed most of the.
I see a headline: "Things fall apart."
Oh, but we've discussed.
Is that over the NPP?
That was the
okay.
issue he brought up.
Over power struggle.
Yeah, over.
Okay, then let me get into mine. Business and Financial Times. So, Cuts International pushes for ATM fee reforms. I think that story was even in our business update story this morning. They're saying we should follow international best practices and scrap those monthly fees that you pay when you use your ATM card. And in fact, give you about 3 or 4 windows when your ATM machine for your bank fails. You can withdraw money from another bank without the same charges. And that's that story there. I'll come to you for your quick reflection. Let me just run through the front page. Concerns mount over potential share nut export ban. CIHRM president urges HR professionals to uphold workplace ethics. Banks pressed to regain ground as fintechs lead digital finance and halt Talo license extension. IEA urges government raises concerns over 700 million arbitration revenue losses. So let's start from the ATM story. And I want to add the CIHRM story, not specifically on them, but on HR, whether or not as a country we take HR seriously, whether we understand what it is, what happens in our various workplaces. You're a politician, so I don't know if you have need for HR.
I don't think we take, that seriously.
Let's discuss this.
HR professional.
You are an HR professional.
I worked as...
Often we think HR is some reports here and there when something isn't going well, but I've seen so many documentaries. It goes deeper than that. But I haven't seen one, like personally, I haven't seen the deep level that other countries take seriously human resources, especially at the workplace. I haven't seen that in Ghana. Even customer service, you know, there are things that, there's so many gaps in there. So please, enlighten us. How are we doing?
So I used to work as a workforce intelligence analyst at Hanover Insurance, a $6 billion insurance company in the U.S., in Worcester, Massachusetts. And I was in the workforce intelligence analyst, you would think is in an IT department, but no, that was in the HR department. It's under the HRIS department. So we focused on data analysis, basically analyzing company-wide data. So when you come to HR, you have the talent acquisition, which also falls under recruitment. You have payroll, you have compensation, you have employee relations. I mean, different, if my memory serves me right, we have about 7 different departments within HR, largely focused on making sure you develop the talent, get the right talent in, make sure that talents are properly compensated, make sure they are properly aligned to the right businesses within the company. So HR goes beyond, I think, what the typical person knows about HR. Do
you have the same experience? I mean, you are a professional. Yeah. When you're relating to transnational organizations, I don't want to mention specific brands, compared to Ghanaian organizations, like, you know, Ghanaian local companies, do you see the difference in terms of helping these talents settle in terms of even the processes of poaching or, you know, bringing aboard a talent from one organization to the other? Do you see these things you talk about? Do you see them effectively?
No, honestly, I haven't had the chance to really delve into the Ghanaian HR practice. But, I mean, HR practice has some degree of uniformity. So I would want to believe that these practices should be normal in the Ghanaian setting. I haven't had the privilege working in Ghana HR, but I want to believe that definitely some of these things are common within the Ghanaian setting. I'm going to Facebook to see. I'm sure those watching us will be sending us some comments on this particular topic. So let me get to Amanda now. Amanda, you are head of Clinton Consultancy. Obviously, you work with people and the day-to-day in terms of how they actually do your work, because you're the head. It's of great concern to you. How do you manage them?
Well, I mean, I think I'd rather look at the general and then perhaps focus on me. But human resource is the greatest asset any company or country can have. It is like feeding yourself poison if you don't care about how you manage human resource, how you recruit human resource, and how you cultivate human resource, because ironically, they're the ones who are going to make money for you in terms of there is only so much leadership can do, but you can't do it all by yourself. And then if you don't have people that you trust, if you don't have people that you can give work to, etc., that can move that work forward, you are the end sufferer. So human resource is not about, per se, the people. It really is about management, and if you want to make money for your organization or your company or your political party, you better care about how you manage your people, who you recruit, what their motivations are, and even their reasoning. You know, if you watch out their psychological reasoning, do they have integrity? Is it one, two of the same mistake? If so, how are you going to deal with it to turn it around? And they are the ones who make money for you, ironically. So it isn't just about the people, but I think leadership is being smart to manage the assets of human resources. Otherwise, you yourself will lose money and you've wasted that investment in training someone. So it's a speciality, but it is also like a psychological assessment of who you're working with. And it's something that Ghana must develop. And now I know that NDC is signing contracts to send people out in terms of, key areas like construction and different key areas. They're signing contracts, so some of that, of our labor, is going out. And for me, some people complain about that, but for me, it's good that it isn't always, just inward, but we're sending out some of our best whilst training the remainder of our best. And the irony is when you send people out, they always say, oh, I met someone from Ghana, and this is how they're like, so they expect you to be like that, etc. So it is good to send out some of our best whilst training some more. Thank you. Basically.
You have the last word on this, and then we move on.
I think in some jurisdictions, they refer to this as a human capital. That's very, very important. You know, every organization is concerned about return on investment. And the biggest investment any organization will make is the human capital. If you develop the human capital, as Amanda said, they will rather give you the returns you want. But unfortunately, in our part of the world, once recruited, nobody cares. And for me, one area we need to look at is constant training. Constant training is very, very important on the job. No matter your level of experience, no matter your qualification, you constantly need to be refreshed about the new trends, new technology in whatever field you are operating. And that is the responsibility of the HR people. So we need to do a lot more. Look at the emotional needs of the employees so that you can get the best out of them. It's not only about remunerations. You look, emotional needs are also very important. And these are all responsibilities of the HR department of an organization.
Okay, so my last story for this news review. I'll come back to you to talk about the ATM issue. But if, Kingsley, can we watch the video from the clash in Parliament, from the appointment vetting committee? And that's the last story for us. We can't watch it, okay, we don't have enough time. But there seemed to be something. At first, I thought it was just, just politics, but Bernard Ahiafor and Afenyo have clashed so many times. From the very first appointment of ministers nominees that we saw up till now. A few days ago, I heard Afenyo say, Bernard, addressed him as chairman and said, we've had a good day. Yeah. Don't let us ruin it. But it didn't hold because now they have ruined it. What is your take on how we are seeing our politicians? Yesterday, even Dr. Kwame Asante commended Afenyo for the level of questions that he's asking. They're very analytical, deep thinking. Yeah. And now these things happen and it sort of masks the good work that they're doing. And you can't help but think, why can't we just keep our heads together? Let me start with you, Kofi.
It's Parliament, and Parliament, has different sides. And certainly, you should expect some of these things to come up. And then once the president has appointed people, Ahiafor has a duty to protect them. right? And I think sometimes he goes overboard, and that's what Afenyo...
Ahiafor goes overboard?
Yeah, I think that's why Afenyo tries to remind him. You know, because intrinsically, what Ahiafor is doing is trying to protect the president's candidate, which is standard. But you must not overdo it. You know, Afenyo has the right...
So that's the sense you get?
No.
That Ahiafor is trying to protect the president's candidate?
Of course. I mean, look, going back to the previous veterans, there were questions that he wouldn't allow to go through. Why do you think he was doing that? It's part of the protection. You know, but Afenyo also feels that, look, these are important questions. I saw a video very briefly where Afenyo was having some challenges with Ahiafor over, I think he said, you know, don't forget, you go back to opposition and we'll also come, you know, essentially saying that, look, we also have power and we will do probably worse than what you are doing. But in it all, I think they are still good friends. I mean, they will come back and work for Ghana.
I hope so.
But the bottom line is that, you know, one accusation. You have to make this brief. I'm making it very brief. One accusation during the vetting of the ministers was that Ahiafor was too soft. I'm sure you remember that. That was
earlier in the year.
Earlier, yeah. So he's trying to, you know, exert it.
That we
didn't see. And Afenyo is saying, look, my friend, you can't overdo it. Okay. I think that's pretty much.
All right.
Kofi is doing this.
Do you agree with him?
No, totally disagree. Totally disagree. If you know our first Deputy Speaker, Honorable Bernard Ahiafor, very, very brilliant guy, calm demeanor, but very assertive. So sometimes people take his demeanor, his tolerance to be his weakness. And I think Honorable Afenyo Markin has on countless occasions overstretched the limits of Ahiafor. It is rather the minority leader who is overdoing things. You see, he will ask a particular question, you answer, then change the semantics, come to ask you the same question. And there are rules guiding that a question that has been answered should not be repeated. So these are occasions when you will see Ahiafor coming in. And Kofi himself has said that the public perception out there is that Ahiafor is weak, but he's not weak. He keeps telling us on the committee we have 7 members. MPP has 5. So at every point, we have the numbers to get whoever before the appointment committee to go through. But the chairman has intentionally decided that he will give...
the chairman?
I'm talking about the Honorable Bernard Ahiafor, who chairs the appointment committee, to give the minority the say. Because at the end of the day, when it comes to voting, we have the numbers. But it appears the minority leader has been abusing that privilege. And that is why on few occasions, you see the chairman of the appointment committee coming in to say, no, enough is enough. So I think if you know him, Honorable Bernard Ahiafor is on top of his brief when he's sitting in the chamber, when he's doing his job. But Kofi, we should not take his calm demeanor to be his weakness. I think that is what...
don't I love that Amanda is here. So Kofi Tonto says Bernard Ahiafor is being overly dramatic sometimes.
No, but no, it is rather
Mr.
Afenyo.
Dixon is saying that it is Afenyo Markin who is trying to stampede the work of Bernard Ahiafor. What do you say? Please neutralize this.
I think it's really important in politics, in business, and in, you know, this is not family affair. It's important, you know, the optics that comes across because, you know, millions of people are watching you and they're watching you on TV, they're watching you. So you've got to be able to have that level of decorum because at the end of the day, if it's a private matter, you can deal with it privately. But if it's public, you guys have all the training in the world on optics-wise how it appears.
Do they?
I mean, it took them 20 years to get to where they got to, so they develop a thick skin.
From that, Parliament is one place you constantly get the training.
Okay.
But every session, you get about 2-3 trainings.
Do you see that training?
We don't see it, but the training is there.
And very relevant. You know, there is no institution or no educational setup where people are trained how to become members of parliament.
Oh, yeah.
So when you come in constantly, you are trained so that you can perform your representational duties, your oversight
I'm
duties.
sorry, this is Amanda's time and we have to go.
Then,
so what you're saying is that the human resource segment of parliament is working. Okay.
And then also to remove all emotional affect.
Yeah.
Because, you know what I mean? These guys, they have a lot of thick skin to even some of the things that are said about them publicly. You will only remain if you have thick skin. So they naturally have thick skin. So the propaganda of having emotions and things, and then they can go off and shake each other's hands, as we saw with, I think, Mahama and Akufo when they went to some retreats.
Somewhere in Kwewu.
Yes, I mean, they were so happy with each other and, you know, talking, and yet the optics-wise of how their people behave, it's as if they wouldn't be able to sit next to each other. So I think removing emotional affect and optics is very important because nobody has thicker skins than any politician in the world. And that must translate to how the public view them, I think.
Well, thank you all so much. I'll give you 1 minute each to give me your final words, but feel free to spend some time on the ATM, the call from CATS International on these, should I call it interest waivers on ATMs. Kofi.
Yeah, so on the ATMs, I definitely agree with, you know, the suggestion of making it, enhancing the fees and making sure it's more appropriate for us, definitely. Because sometimes I do get charges, well, depending on where you use it. I've had charges up to, I think, 20 cedis per transaction before.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it must have been an international transaction. But locally, depending on the bank and where you go, they also charge fees and stuff. But I think largely it comes to how we do things in a very nonchalant manner in Ghana because corporations get away with so much, right? And I think it goes back to the point that I was making earlier, that Parliament needs to step in. If it's not constitutional now, with the constitutional amendments that we are doing, we need to empower Parliament more to serve as the first consumer protection agents for Ghanaians. So they can check some of these things to protect Ghanaians. Because I think we are being taken advantage of. Speaking of one thing that was also on my mind, we have too many dead zones in Ghana. And what I mean by the telcos. Look, there are some strategic areas in Ghana, East Legon, for example, one of the most affluent, and now it's turning into a residential plus commercial area. You get to certain areas in East Legon and your phone call just drops. It's almost like every single day.
Honorable Sam George, you have a missed call on the AM show. That's your time, I'm sorry.
You know,
Mr. Dixon.
Yeah, Kofi has said it all. It's very expensive using the ATM. And if you want to avoid congestions in the banking hall, these are some of the things we should be doing. In fact, in UK, for 5 years that I lived in UK, I can't recollect the number of times I went to the banking hall, whether it's depositing, whether it's withdrawal, because it's almost zero charges. And I think we should be promoting that. One story I wanted to have a bite was the appointment of spokesperson for the Ministry of Sports and Recreation. You know, that's a huge area. He's a brilliant guy, and he has a huge responsibility. You know, sports is the only area in the media space where people are employed specifically. You see, I don't see radio station, television employing somebody as maybe economic reporter, as a Greek reporter, as legal. You may be doing other things, but every single radio station, every single television station has sports presenters. And what that means is the level of scrutiny at the Ministry of Sports is so huge. And for that matter, you need somebody who is well-versed in their relation with the media. So media relations is key. That is why...
I'm sorry, that's our time.
The ministry, you know the sports ministry, under President Kufuor, about 8 different ministers, under President Mahama, about 8. It's very difficult to survive because of the level of scrutiny. And if you have a spokesperson who relates well with the media, who knows, that will inure to your benefit and for your longer-term survival.
All right. Amanda, I have the last word.
Yes, I do think that the charges are necessary for a lot of banks in Ghana, but they'll make money wherever they can. And, you know, there are some bad practices with banks, you know, like, for instance, just delaying on sending out large payments because, you know, the trade team is probably playing with that money. You know, there's very, very, you know, it can cost somebody a lot, but the trade team doesn't mind doing that, you know, things like that. But ultimately, I think this Fitch upgrade, you know, it is a signal, not quite salvation yet for Ghana, and we should ensure that it is not just short-term, and that we really capitalize on this and improve on it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks to MPP.
Gentlemen and ladies. Those who join us for the conversation, of course, you just heard Amanda Clinton. She's head of Chambers Clinton Consultancy. Kofi Tonto is political aide to former Vice President Dr. Alhaji Bawumia, and of course the legislator among us from Brekum West, Mr. Chiredua Dixon, Member of Parliament for Brekum West. Thank you all so much for joining us. Remember, the AM show is sponsored by Waylead Properties. After the break, we get into our big stories. We're taking a look at everything happening at the NSS and NSA. Please stay.